לבדד יושבת ובליבה חומה. ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור. ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור. איכה יבשו בורות המים, כיכר השוק ריקה, ואין פוקדת הר הבית בעיר העתיקה. ובמערות אשר בסלע מהללות רוחות, ואין יורד אל ים המלח בדרך ירי.
Hello, everyone. Just making sure, can everyone hear me? Yeah, okay. So as usual, it's good to see some familiar faces. I'm sharing my screen, so I'm gonna stop seeing you and I'm gonna start. And just to remind everyone, and if there's some people who are new, I'm Shuvi Hoffman from the National Library of Israel. With me is my colleague Dara, and she is if you need any technical help or any help in the chat, you're welcome to write to her and she can help you out. And also she'll be sharing a couple of links as we go along through the session. I'm also reminding everyone that this is recorded and we will be uploading this to our website together with the rest of our sessions. So you can use it and share it also at a later date. All right, so today we are going to be discussing Yom Yerushalayim, Jerusalem Day. And I'm taking the opportunity to talk about Jerusalem, also about the events that happened in 1967, and also Jerusalem, I would say, as a metaphor or as a microcosm of Israeli society in general. So it's very fitting that this is our final session of this series that really explored Israeli society from some different angles. And I think today we'll touch upon those issues. Again, as usual, it's just the tip of the iceberg, but we're gonna talk a little bit about how some of these complexities come and manifest in Jerusalem. So again, today we'll be getting a glimpse into the historical events celebrated on Jerusalem Day, as well as how this day is celebrated today in Israel. We'll see that, of course, as expected, it's not celebrated in all populations and in all parts of society. Jerusalem, like I said, can be seen as a microcosm of Israeli society with its challenges and complexities, but also with its beauty and really some things that we see in Jerusalem that are that can be overwhelmingly joyful and exciting. What I want to emphasize today when we think about how we teach or how our learners can learn new material or a new topic, I want to focus on this idea that we need to give our learners bite-sized information at times so that they can sort of wrap their heads around something. But ultimately, we also want to give them the big picture. Sometimes we have to deal with this tension between wanting to give our learners some kind of, idea about something that's really some historical event that's very hard to explain. So we give them, the big title, and we don't always go into the details. So we're going to talk a little bit today, and we're going to sort of also experience a little bit of that tension or finding that balance between the details and the big picture. So speaking of Jerusalem, this image here is relates to a famous metaphor. I think it's an Indian metaphor of 6 blind men who come to see an elephant. They obviously can't actually see it physically, so they start groping around and feeling the different parts of the elephant. And each one of these blind men happens to fall upon a different part of the elephant and right away concludes what this creature or this thing is. So one says it's a wall because he's feeling the body. One says it's a rope because of the tail, etc. I'm bringing this image here to sort of frame a little bit of what we'll be discussing today. And I think in general, what we are trying to achieve in the National Library of Israel when we think of our learners. We realize that our reality in Israel is very, very complicated. And in Jerusalem especially, we know that there are many different sides to reality. We know that there are different groups who feel many different emotions and have different ideologies in one given moment. And as Israelis, and maybe as human beings in general, we each tend to assume that what we're seeing is the whole picture, and it usually isn't. And I think part of our role as educators is really to emphasize also to our students, our learners, that there's always another side to the story. That's not to say that we don't want to give our students or our learners a sense that they have their story and their narrative, and that it's strong and that it's solid and that they can relate to it, but just to always be aware of other perspectives and other angles, and also to learn more about these other perspectives and other angles to the degree that we can. So this is sort of, I'm just putting it out there and naming it, that I'm well aware of the fact that even today in this session, we can't really relate to all of the different angles of each one of these topics, especially with all the sensitivities in Jerusalem, but I'm going to try to give a little glimpse into at least some of these angles. So Yom Yerushalayim is celebrated on the 28th of Iyar. That is the day that commemorates in the Six-Day War, the day of liberating the Old City and the Western Wall. It's really interesting to see, and I think we've spoken about this in other sessions as well. We sort of assume that historical events, okay, we commemorate this event, it actually happened on the 28th of Iyar, and then it's only fitting for it to be commemorated year after year. But the truth is, in the beginning, it wasn't so obvious, and it was the chief rabbinate of Israel that right away declared a day of gratitude. There was much debate between rabbis whether or not this would be a day to say Hallel, making it an official Jewish festival. In the end, many communities do say Hallel, and we'll get to that when we speak about how people celebrate Yom Yerushalayim today. There was an opinion that said, although it actually happened on the 28th of Iyar, it's fitting to postpone the celebrations to the Rosh Chodesh Sivan, to the 1st of Sivan, because we are in the time of Sfirat HaOmer, and the custom is not to have any festive events, weddings, bar mitzvahs, etc. People often postpone till after the Omer, or there are specific dates, for instance, Lag BaOmer, or other dates that people choose in order to have a simcha during Sfirat HaOmer. Nonetheless, in the end, the decision was to keep it on the original date and commemorate the actual historical event on the 28th of Iyar. While the chief rabbinate was very quick to celebrate and declare this as a day of gratitude, it wasn't as simple. We know that the mayor, Teddy Kollek, I would say the iconic mayor of Jerusalem, who was mayor of Jerusalem for 28 years, was just in the beginning of his career as a mayor, but he really was against this idea that even the year after, on the 28th of Iyar, that there would be festivities in the city. He was very much concerned with the reaction of the Arab population of East Jerusalem. He felt that it might be offensive to them. And similarly, Prime Minister Levi Eshkol as well was a little hesitant to sort of embrace this full festival for Yom Yerushalayim, for the liberation of the Western Wall. We know that in the Six-Day War, it wasn't only the liberation of the old city of Jerusalem, but also the Golan Heights from the Syrians and in the north, and Gaza Strip, and Gaza Strip in the south, and the West Bank from Jordan. So, as we know, and I think many of you probably are familiar with this exceptional victory in the Six-Day War that no one anticipated. No one even thought Israel was going to war. It wasn't a war that Israel was prepared for. And yet it was overwhelmingly successful when it comes to the military point of view. I'm sure many of you are familiar with books and things and other pieces that are written about the way the Six-Day War has affected Israel, not only in a positive way, and has really affected Israeli society and made things very, very complicated. But at the time, there was this overjoy, there was overwhelming joy in the Jewish community. But again, we can see that we have some leaders who are already a little hesitant to embrace that joy and are thinking about other people who live in Jerusalem specifically and who might be offended. Ultimately, the government nonetheless decides that there is a date of the Jerusalem Day on the 28th of Iyar, like we said, and the actual official law that really states what festivities happen on this day is only legislated in 1998. So that just gives you an idea of the process of this decision of how to celebrate this day, what Jerusalem will look like during this day. So this is just a snippet from a newspaper published in 1968. And the title in Hebrew, Chagigot or Chagigot, which is translated celebrations in bold, as opposed to light celebrations. And that dilemma of whether or not it's appropriate and how it's appropriate to celebrate the liberation of the West, of the Western Wall and the Old City, and basically the unification of Jerusalem, which is a dramatic event for everyone living in the city. And this specific article, and again, this is just a snippet of it, but just to give you the gist of the article, it really just reflects the debates that are between the rabbis, between the rabbinate and the government, between different people in Jerusalem. And in the end, what's decided is basically similar to what we have today, which is there is a state ceremony at Givat HaTachmoshet. It is a festive day. So there's an official ceremony of the state. There's a parade that takes place in Jerusalem. And of course, in Jerusalem, we do feel this day as a festive, celebratory day. And in schools, it's not a vacation day. It's not a day off. But in schools, there are special ceremonies and events to mark this event. And like I mentioned before, in many communities, in the synagogues, people say Hallel. It's interesting because also on Yom Ha'atzmaut, on Independence Day, many communities say Hallel, but it's not 100% in agreement, meaning there are different communities, of course, the more Haredi and anti-Zionist communities in Jerusalem or in Israel, but also in general, there's sometimes a little bit of, it's a little vague, and different communities do different things, and whether or not they say Hallel with a bracha in the beginning or without, on Yom Ha'atzmaut and also on Yom Yerushalayim. There was even a suggestion in some places by some rabbis to say Hallel also in the evening on the Yom Ha'atzmaut, for instance. But Hallel on Yom Yerushalayim is mostly the custom is to say it during the day. There's also a very special ceremony held at Har Herzl. There's a special site honoring the Ethiopian Jews who died on their journey to Israel, and Yom Yerushalayim was chosen as the day to commemorate those people. It's very symbolic because the Jewish community from Ethiopia, whenever they, in their tradition, whenever they think of Israel, they really focus on Jerusalem and Jerusalem of gold and reaching the city of Jerusalem and the holy city of Jerusalem. So it's very fitting for this memorial ceremony to take place on Yom Yerushalayim. So what does happen in Israel or in Jerusalem during Yom Yerushalayim? What's the content of this day? So the truth is, many people don't celebrate Yom Yerushalayim in any special way. Like I said, there isn't a day of vacation. There's not a day off from work or from school. In many schools, there is something maybe more symbolic. There's a ceremony. But there's also a custom that started with Rav Tzvi Yehuda Kook, who's the son of a Rav Kook, and his students from Yeshivat Merkaz Arav in central Jerusalem, where they, beginning already in 1968, they started marching from their yeshiva, from the area of Gan Sakar, which is basically in the entrance to the city. And they marched with flags, and in an exciting parade, they would march into the old city through the different gates of the old city. And that to this day is something that still happens in Jerusalem. But again, I would say that the majority of the people who participate in this march are from the religious Zionist group in Israel. And also not all Israeli Zionists would, religious Zionists would participate in this. It depends, different people have different opinions about this. And over the years, which something that I think really started as a genuine overjoy and overflowing of emotions, and this need and this excitement to go to the old city and reach the Kotel year after year, something that was really, we couldn't take for granted. And for 19 years, there was that wasn't possible. Over the years has become a little bit problematic, and there are some people who don't want to take part in that, because there has been some friction between people who march in the parade and the population, the Arab population, especially in the Muslim quarter. That has also led to some different policies about where this march can actually go, how many policemen we have on the ground, etc. And a lot of rabbis and leaders have called people to restrain themselves, and really, if it's a joyous day and they're going to celebrate and go to the Kota, that's fine, but not to act in any way, in any violence. There was even a petition to the High Court of Justice to prevent this march from going through the Muslim quarter, because that seemed to be one of the sources of the problem, but the case was denied. It was by Ir Amim and Tag Meir, two organizations that really work towards maintaining the rights of, in this case, it's the Arab population in Jerusalem, but in general, for the minorities in Jerusalem and in Israel in general, and to make sure they don't suffer from violence. I think that over the years, and I'm talking as a Jerusalemite myself, personally, as a kid, I remember being taken on Yom Yerushalayim by Bnei Akiva. We used to, go to the old city. It was just natural. It was fun. It was like a, one of those happening kind of days that everyone wanted to go and see and be seen. And over the years, things have changed somewhat. And again, there's some groups that just don't participate in this in any way. It's become a little bit less mainstream, I would say. What I want to talk about now is a few things, and we sort of heard some of this in the beginning of our session as you were entering the room. The iconic song of the Six-Day War and of the Day of Jerusalem is Jerusalem of Gold by Naomi Shemer. So I'm sure many of you are familiar. There are many, many different singers who have performed with this song. But let's go back to the original and to the story behind this, this song. So what I actually want to suggest is if there's someone who wants to unmute themselves and read what's written here, which is a first-hand account from Naomi Shemer herself. And I just want to say, going back to what I opened with in the session, we really want to focus on how we can give our learners this kind of a more detailed description of these historical events, and not just leave them with the bottom line. The bottom line is in 67, the old city was conquered and Jerusalem was united, but to really give them a sense that they are listening to people who actually lived at that time and experienced it, and getting a little bit more detail. And I think that's why, even though this text is a little long, I think it's important for us to read it and know it, because it tells us a little bit of the story behind this historical event and behind Naomi Shemer's experience. So is there someone who wants to unmute themselves and read?
Linda, do you want to go for it?
Yep, I just moved it so I could make the print bigger. In the winter of 67, I was approached by Gil Aldema of the Voice of Israel. Teddy Kollek, the mayor at that time, had asked him to commission a song about Jerusalem. For many years, the Voice of Israel held a song competition on Independence Day, until then broadcast on the radio only because we only got television in 1968. That same year, 1967, they elected on a one-time basis to also commission songs with 5 professional composers, I among them. I found it very difficult to write the song until I recalled the legend about Rabbi Akiva promising his wife Rachel a city of gold. A piece of gold jewelry depicting Jerusalem. I chose Shuli Natan to perform the song. She was a 20-year-old soldier teacher with a guitar and a voice like bells. The song was a hit from the very first performance, and at midnight, when Shuli was asked to return to the stage, the audience was already singing along on the chorus. At that point, we were moving towards war, and 3 weeks later, when the paratroopers liberated the Western Wall, they had an anthem at the ready. On that day, 7/6/1967, I added a 4th verse to the song in honor of the victory. Wow. Meragesh.
Me'od. Thank you for reading so nicely. And what's even more meragesh is that in the National Library, we actually have this little, it's like a little address book diary kind of thing, where basically when Naomi Shemer was looking where to jot down this last verse, this final verse of Jerusalem of Gold in 67, she picked up her book and her little pad of paper, and you can even see there's like someone's phone number here on the left. And here, this is her original draft of what we know today as the 4th verse of Jerusalem of Gold. So we have this actual item in the National Library of Israel, and we have the entire Naomi Shemer archive in the library. And it's really, I think, exciting and emotional, I would say, to actually see this in ink, and to appreciate that, something that we see as iconic today sort of happened at some point in history, and it wasn't even that long ago, by, people who were, they're rolling with the punches, and they're sort of, dealing with changes in reality. And the fact that Shuli Natan, who really was just a soldier herself, gets up to sing this song, and it wasn't even, the way things happened is just really powerful to see the details behind these stories. And we know that Shuli Natan was really the first singer to perform with this song, but later Ofra Chaza and many other Israeli singers perform with this song, and it really has become almost like an anthem, and definitely a song that's linked very strongly to the 6-Day War. Moving forward, by the way, this is, again, we're going to share this whole presentation, and you have the words here in English. It was translated by Yael Levine. And what we can see in this song is that, again, I'm sure some of you at least are familiar with the song, but maybe just to sort of look at the words a little bit, we're talking about I would say, a love song to Jerusalem. Like if Naomi Shemer drew from the love story between Rabbi Akiva and Rachel, his wife, and he gives her this jewelry, probably some kind of crown that was made out of gold and had this shape of the walls of Jerusalem. We see that Jerusalem really was, for so many years, unattainable, and people just were yearning to come back to Jerusalem. And so again, in 6 days, and everything happened so quickly, all of a sudden, we know that Jews from all around the world were just overwhelmed with joy and with awe when this happened. So that's the story of Naomi Shemer, and you'll see in the end, we also have more links to some more things about her. Another icon of this war, of this victory in 67, is Moshe Dayan. So as you can see, there's a little bit of a humorous caricature here that we also have a bunch of these Dayenu cartoons in our collections in the NLI from the Chicago Sentinel. we can see here that Moshe Dayan, his name is Moshe, and he's being compared here to biblical Moses, who started out as a small baby, but in the end rescued and saved and redeemed the Jewish people from Egypt. And so the comparison of Moshe Dayan to Moses, to Moshe Rabbeinu, is striking. And I think that many people really do think of Moshe Dayan when they think of these historical events. Something that I think is really important to mention about Moshe Dayan is, and this goes back to the complexities of the situation in Jerusalem and in Israel in general. The first moments when the first soldiers actually go down to the area of the Western Wall, and then they realize that the Jordanian soldiers have left, and they're basically conquering the old city and the Western Wall, and they're arriving at the Western Wall. And there's a very famous recording of Mota Gur, who says, you know, Har HaBayit Be'yadenu, Har HaBayit Be'yadenu, we're in Temple Mount. And one of the soldiers spontaneously says to Mota Gur, can I put up an Israeli flag on the Dome of the Rock? He says, sure. You know, we're all so excited. This is crazy. This is amazing. What a victory. Moshe Dayan at the time is in a different area, looking with his binoculars onto the Temple Mount, and he sees this soldier putting the flag up, and he right away gets onto the his walkie-talkie machine, and he says, get that flag down right away. We don't want to start a war with the whole Arab world. We don't want to offend anyone. We don't want to declare anything more than what we've already accomplished. Get that flag down off of the mosque. And they do that right away. And ultimately, also in the end of the war, Moshe Dayan is famous for his decision of giving over the power and the responsibility for the Temple Mount to the Waqf, to the Muslim religious authorities, and not, despite the fact that the Israeli army conquered that area. And as you know, until this day, there are many complications and many issues when it comes to Jews going up to Temple Mount. Jews are not allowed to pray on Temple Mount, and there's a lot of caution and a lot of security issues when it comes to Jews who want to go up to Temple Mount. But Moshe Dayan is the one who really handed the responsibility over to the Muslims in order to avoid more conflict and more tension. So that's Moshe Dayan. And I think that if there's any iconic picture that we associate with this war, it's the picture of the paratroopers at the Western Wall, taken by photographer David Rubinger. We're going to watch a 1-minute video about these soldiers and where they are today a little bit. Let's listen to their story and then we'll move on.
כשהמפקד שלנו אמר, עולים לירושלים, בשבילי זה היה הדבר הכי קדוש בעולם.
We entered the Lions Gate, fight face to face. היה צריך ללכת קדימה, לנצח! We went down the stairs. In the right side, the Wailing Wall. All the Jewish history passed my mind. It was very exciting to participate in the liberation of the Kotel. David Rubinger, the photographer, took a picture, and the rest is history.
Okay, so that was the iconic picture of the paratroopers and the a short account of those paratroopers today. And what I would like to do now is, after we've seen, I would say, maybe 3 major icons of the Six-Day War and of Jerusalem Day. We have Naomi Shemer and the Jerusalem of Gold song. We have Moshe Dayan, and we have this picture of the paratroopers. I would like us to, first of all, as Dara is also going to share the link to this Padlet in our chat, and I'm going to open it up in a moment on my share screen. Just to appreciate again some of the connections or some of the details behind these grand historical events. So I'm going to stop share for a moment. And hello, everyone. I'm going to share my screen with the Padlet, but I'm encouraging you to open it up on your screens as well, either on your computer, on your device. It's always easier to see the Padlet in full on the computer screen and not on the phone. So in the meantime, I'm going to give you a moment to open it up, but here we are. This is our Padlet. And what I've done here for you is collected many items we have. Some are connected directly to the Six-Day War and to some of the things that we've seen up until now. And some are more general about Jerusalem. And what I want to suggest is this is, I find, and I'm sure some of you have already had experience with Padlets teaching online these days. I find that a Padlet is a very good way to also have the learners participate and be active in the learning, but also it gives you a lot of space to put in many resources and many different activities. So as you'll see, as we scroll down, there'll be some different activities on our Padlet. But we're going to start with activity number 1. And again, this is just, I would say we're modeling what you can possibly do with your students or with your learners, but I encourage you to participate as well. So we have here different items that have to do with Jerusalem, that are connected to Jerusalem, from a picture of Mayor Teddy Kollek and a picture of students in an ulpan. And we have here a page from a Haggadah from 1450, writing Lashana Haba'a B'Yerushalayim. We have the image here, which I personally really love this image of Drive Slowly with this donkey. This is taken in the 1930s, in the time of the British Mandate. And just to see these signs in English, in Arabic, and in Hebrew, and how that makes us maybe feel and connect to Jerusalem. And there's some other items here that there's some maps, and here's a beautiful picture of the Al-Aqsa Mosque during Ramadan. So what I'm encouraging each one of you to do is to choose one of these items. You can choose more than one, but at least one item that catches your attention and that for you encapsulates the idea of what Jerusalem really is. And just write briefly in the comments why this resonates with you. And if there's something that you would like to add, you can also do so. Or you can comment if you would add something in this in the activity box. I just want to say something about Padlets in general. You can duplicate this Padlet and use it. And if someone, after the session, if someone's having trouble with that, I can also send you the link separately or explain to you how to do it. And this way, if you like to, you can also use this Padlet with your learners. You just have to pay attention that you, whether or not you're copying all the posts, and you might need to, when you duplicate it, you might need to erase some comments or reactions that people have put up today. But there is a function in Padlet that you can save a template and make a copy, and then it's yours to edit, and you can give access to the people you want. So again, I'm encouraging you to take a moment, look at these, scroll down. There's a couple of lines of items on this activity, and if you reach activity number 2, then you know you should stop and comment on one of these items that are in front of you. So I'm gonna stop sharing for a moment and let you respond, react, write maybe something in the comments. And this is also a time if someone has a question or something, a comment they would like to make while we're writing on the Padlet, this is a good time to ask.
Shuvi, while we're waiting, if I
Yeah.
want to directly use this, let's say, really immediately, I'm a little unsure of how to just replicate it. After the class, when you send the slides, can you just explain to me how to, or give me the link to it and I'll save the
Yes,
link?
yes. You should be able to use this same link, and then in your Padlet account, go up to the menu on the top and just do duplicate. And then just be sure to
Okay.
click that you duplicate all posts, because sometimes it just duplicates the title and the background. You just have to make sure you're duplicating the post. Now, what I'm stressing though is that if you all want to use this, which is great, just be sensitive to first, before you actually send it to your students or to your learners, erase whatever comments have been made from this group. What I do when I'm facilitating, for instance, I already have my own clean template of this, and I've only shared one copy with you. So that's the trick if you're the one creating the Padlet. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again, and we're going to look at that, at our Padlet a little bit. So we can see, again, this is really just the tip of the iceberg, but we have many different items here. And we can see, again, if you click on the comment box, so you can see what people have written about each one of these. I think that, again, there are plenty of sources here and different directions you could take these resources. People have commented about the Ulpan, that you can see the diversity in the city of Jerusalem. Ulpan Etzion, by the way, is the first Ulpan, and it still exists to this day. I actually live nearby. And I think this is an opportunity, these resources are an opportunity to really talk about what Jerusalem means in Jewish culture, in Jewish tradition, in Jewish history, the different time periods that Jerusalem, I would say, we take it for granted. Definitely our younger students take it for granted that there is such a thing, the state of Israel, and that Jerusalem is now in a part of the state of Israel, and it wasn't always so. And I think that it's important to sort of give them a little bit more of a perspective here, and to appreciate that there are different aspects and different time periods. And what Jerusalem is, for instance, even when we think of L'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim, we can have a whole discussion about what it means to pray today for L'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim, even if you're not really planning on being L'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim, and what the notion and the idea of Jerusalem symbolizes, and not just the physical city of Jerusalem. Here, like I was saying before, you have a bunch of things about the Jerusalem of Gold song, a source sheet, which I really recommend opening and looking at. It really just shows like all of the different sources that were embedded in that song and inspired Naomi Shemer when she wrote the song. And it could be a really interesting, actually an interesting Tanakh class, not only a class about a lesson about Israel or about Jerusalem, but even just to see how different psukim, different verses from the Tanakh are incorporated in this song, and more and more. I want to move on, since I'm being mindful of our time as well. I want to move on to activity number 2. In activity number 2, if in activity number 1, I would say we're focusing more on our personal connection, what baggage we come with, or what kind of things, what emotions we come with when we think about Jerusalem. In activity number 2, I would say the idea is to give a face to these huge historical events and experiences. So it's amazing that in the National Library of Israel, we have really collections of such rare photos that you don't see and are very hard to find in the official, I would say, publications of Israel and the Six-Day War. We don't always get to see. For instance, I personally love this picture of this little girl yawning at the Kotel when her mother's immersed in prayer. I just think it makes these events more relatable. Like, we can really picture the people who came the day after the war, and for the first time, some maybe had remembered being at the Western Wall, and maybe this is their first time coming to the Kotel and touching the stones. And I think what we see here is we even see Ben Gurion wearing this very typical Israeli hat, and we see Shlomo Goren, who was the chief rabbi of the military rabbinate, and we see Shazar, who also was adamant about coming, and he even wore a helmet. They made him wear a helmet so he doesn't get hurt. I think that's even on the last day of at the end of the war, but immediately afterwards. And we see all these characters and all these people in this area of what we know today as the Kotel. And I think even just seeing the Kotel with all this rubble and the tractors, the bulldozer, is really interesting to see. And some other really, I think, very touching photos that we have here. So again, also here, we don't have to do this whole exercise together now, but I would love for you to share, even if it's in the chat, or you can do it directly on the Padlet. What emotions do you see in these photos? What emotions do they evoke for you when you look at these and you see these are real people who visited the Kotel for the first time the day or a few days after it was in Israeli hands, like for the first time in many, many years. So what photograph would you choose and you think would resonate with your students, maybe? Really bringing this historical event to life and appreciating that it, of course, has a lot to do with the soldiers who fought and sacrificed themselves for the liberation of Jerusalem, but also the simple people, the people who lived in Jerusalem and yearned to come to the Kotel. So again, you can choose an image, you can react on the Padlet, you can also react in the chat box. And Dara, I can't see the chat while I'm sharing my screen, so if there are any specific responses, if somebody wants to share, we can maybe read a couple of things from the chat as well. If there's a photo that really strikes you and connects, maybe there's even people here in the group who actually remember these events of 1967 firsthand. So I'm going to give you a minute to sort of look at all the photos and maybe write a few responses, and then we'll move on to our next activity. Okay, so Zara, do we have any comments in the chat or some questions or something, or should we move on?
Yitzhak was just asking if we can make screen prints of there's so many items that are really unique and rare. So he was wondering if we can make any screen prints of them, if you wanted to relate to that about copyright.
Right. So many of the things that we have in the National Library, of course, are under copyrights. But if the key here is if you can access it online from your computer, then it probably means that they're usable and it's fine and it's okay, especially for educational purposes. These pictures are taken from a blog article that I've put in as a link in our presentation, so you'll get it, a direct link to this album, as it were, of these rare photos, and you're welcome to save them and use them for your educational purposes, of course. And I think it's an opportunity to show students. You can make a presentation out of things and show students just to get a glimpse, really, there's something very, again, I think very beautiful about seeing the simple people who came to the Kotel and not just the generals and the soldiers, but as well also the simple people. So yes, and that, again, that's the rule of thumb in general when it comes to the things that are in the National Library. There are many collections that have very flexible copyrights if it's someone who donated it and wants people to access it and use it. But of course, like any other thing that is published, whether it be a text or a photograph, we are, of course, we're committed to the rights of the people who it belongs to. So it really depends on the terms. So I hope that's understandable. Okay, I'm going back to our Padlet for our final activity on the Padlet. Again, as you can see, I love using the Padlet as a huge wall, literally here, a wall because there are different functions in Padlet, and you can use a Padlet in a more rigid way, but the canvas really allows you to make a huge flow of different activities. And I think the key is to sort of use the sticky notes in different colors, etc., in order to help our learners go with the flow of what we're trying to do and not just get stuck on the first frame. So in this activity, and again, we're not going to be doing this together right now, but there are some ideas here for what your learners can do when it comes to connecting to this topic, to connecting to the idea of Jerusalem and the history of Jerusalem. And there are just a few suggestions here. And I actually want to start with the last suggestion, which here is to write a letter about the Kotel. We all know that, again, there's a big controversy over who gets to pray at the Kotel and where. And if you listen to some of the even recent news about what's called the family section in the Kotel, which is on the south end, what's called Azarat HaMishpachot, where a lot of the conservative and reform movement rabbis they hold prayers there, just because in the main section of the Kotel, there's the men's section and the women's section. What's interesting is also that historically, I mean, it's all part of the same wall, but there's a lot of debate about the different areas of the Kotel and what's considered more, it's not so much holy or not holy, because again, we know that it's all part of the same wall, and it's a wall that actually wasn't an original wall of the temple, but a supporting wall, but yet it has its historical significance. And the idea that not everyone can come and pray there freely is very problematic. And as many of you probably know, there's a lot of activism around that in Israel, and of course in the States and in Europe and in other places in the world from the whole Jewish world. So I would suggest you can, your students might connect this way of expressing what they feel about the situation in the Kotel, or maybe thinking about how they feel about the Kotel in general. Have they ever been to the Kotel? Is it something that's significant to them in any way? I have to say that when I've had these discussions with Israeli students, I don't know if this would surprise you, but there are some Israeli students who have never been to the Kotel. They might have missed, the field trip in, I don't know, 4th grade or 1st grade, and they don't live in Jerusalem, and they might have never even visited the Kotel themselves, and they don't see that as something that's so critical to their Jewish identity. So it's really interesting to see who connects and how they connect to the Kotel. And I think it's a huge issue, and it's worth involving our students in that discussion. And of course, there's some other prompts here for other activities you could possibly do, similar to what we did here, to choose a photograph, maybe write a letter to one of the people in the photograph. How do you feel? What do I feel when I see you in this photograph? Or maybe even reenact one of the scenes in a photo. Again, I think there's some very mundane situations in some of these photos and just ordinary people. And I think it would be interesting for the kids, just similarly to the paratroopers who, again, in the end, like Dr. Ifat says, in the end, there was a picture taken and the rest is history. But when they were standing there at the Kotel, they weren't thinking about being photographed. They were thinking about their emotions at that moment. So there are some famous reenactments of that photo as well. And I think in general, this is an opportunity for students to really bring in their input and their feelings about these topics. For instance, writing to Naomi Shemer, of course, this would be an imaginary letter, but what if you could add another verse to Jerusalem of Gold? What's missing from your point of view as someone who doesn't live in Israel and wants to maybe add a slightly different verse to the song? So again, there's some different suggestions here, and you're welcome, of course, to use them. And I'm just going to show you now the links I was talking about. And again, this is, as usual, we're going to upload this to our website, and you can see we have many links to resources and activities that we've already prepared around Yom Yerushalayim, the source sheet that I mentioned before, and that's also in your Padlet. This there's a video presentation that doesn't include, it's not the photos we saw here, but actually other photos that some of them are more ancient and more, and from even from the turn of the 19th century. Really interesting. And in the background, you'll see that video presentation. It's a collection of photos, but it has Jerusalem of Gold playing in the background. So you can, well, you're welcome to use that in your classrooms as well. And from our blog, from the librarian's blog, and there's also some digital activities that we've created. And again, feel free to use them. There's some printable activity pages and other things that you can access here. In our blog, there was the article I sent you in preparation for this session about how, when the Kotel became such a holy site for the Jewish people. But here you have a couple of other articles, and I think the first one, A Glimpse of 19th Century Jerusalem, is also very interesting. Again, if you want to look back a little bit in history. And the last item is these rare photos taken right after the unification. Just notice that it's like an album, like you have to sort of click on the arrow and you'll see all the photos, just like a photo album. So these are some resources. As usual, we'd love for you to fill out the feedback form. This is also our final session of this series, so feel free to also email me or write in the feedback form in the comments. If this is your first time, if you've participated in the whole series, that it would be great to hear how this has met your needs and helped you in your educational work. And in general, I want to say thank you for everyone for coming, for being participatory, for being here with us, and really looking to learn more about Jewish identity, about Israel, about Jerusalem, about the treasures we hold in the National Library of Israel from the entire Jewish world, from different time periods in history. And I want to encourage you, again, I'm happy if anyone wants to contact me to have a more one-on-one meeting with you, with your educational team, people you work with. If there's a specific topic that you're sort of struggling with, or you see that we have resources about, but you need a little bit of guidance, feel free to email me and we can help. So I'm going to stop share, and if there are any comments or questions as we're wrapping up, I'd love to hear.
Oh, please, can I ask you a question? I'd like to know, what is your role at the library? Like if I wanted to use a photograph or ask you for a photo from one of your books to add into like a video or educational thing, who's the person to contact? Is it you? What's the procedure?
I am the director of the diaspora education in the educational department. We work, of course, as part of the library's activity. We work with students, with teachers, with educators in Israel and around the world. So we can often help you out. I would say that I can be your contact person, and I might have to ask someone else in the library from archives or from other departments in the library what, to find something out about the copyrights. There's a whole department of copyrights as well. So I think if there's something specific, I would love to be your contact person in the library and help you out in any way I can. So you can definitely email me.
That's great. Is your email in the chat? Yes, it is. Okay,
yes. Dara just sent it. And also, if you got the email from me with the invitation for tonight, so you should have my email as well. But again, you have it now in the chat, and you're welcome to write.
So that's great, but I just want to clarify. So if I want to make some educational something, I could use some of your images and it wouldn't be a problem because it's all educational and it's like.
Right, anything that we've published in our lesson plans and in our education website are usable for you as an educator, yes.
Great, thanks, it's really helpful, thank you.
Great. Okay, so again, everyone can feel free to contact me with any other questions, and really thanks. It was great getting to know you, and there's some people who I've seen many times, and I hope to see you more in future activities that we have. And all the best to everyone from Jerusalem. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Shuvi.